Okay, boys, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Uh, Moving on to our series of video lessons. As you know, we have already started the first question uh, from section A of our P4 media studies, that is media regulation. As per the new syllabus, as we have already discussed that unlike before, there used to be a 50 marks question, and for that we had to write almost 3 to 4 pages of quality content. But after the syllabus change, it is now rolled back to 15 marks instead of 50. So you are not required to write more than 2 pages, you can say, and 2 pages of quality content would be good enough, or maybe 2.5 pages max, to impress the examiner with your knowledge by giving proper introduction and body and conclusion to your answer. So, and obviously in any sort of question, if you talk about different sort of questions, like I've compiled here, this is June 2018 till how effective are current regulatory practices, or what are the arguments against more regulations of the media, or changes in society have made media regulations impossible. So there can be various different kinds of questions that can pop up in the exam. So we cannot just have our mind to a certain level of question, and we cannot restrict ourselves to a certain level. We need to be thinking and preparing ourselves into different dimensions, but overall it should be regarding media regulations. So that is why I would be going you through and helping you go through different kinds of scenarios. And obviously, if we talk about a good typical solution, it should be having proper introduction, but with reasonable case studies or examples of regulatory practices, violations and regulatory practices both. And if we look at the question, it says answer two questions, one or more media form. But what I would suggest you, in order to make it look good, research based and impressive solution, you would talk about two media forms, film as well as video games. This is compulsion from my side, and this compulsion would help you get good score in CIs as well. So in my college exams and uh, all other kind of assignments, I would be expecting you to write at least about two media forms. So let's start. Uh, we are going, since we have already discussed through PowerPoint presentation, and we discussed regulatory practices in previous videos. So we would directly be going towards case studies today. And the first one is Pulp Fiction, 1994. Uh, you would have remembered I told you that in AS, when there comes the question of synergy and conversions and marketing and distribution and so on in section B, you are recommended not to quote or specify film examples which are not less than 5 years old. I mean, you should not go beyond 5 years if we are talking about 2021 or 2020. So your recommended or suggested or case study or example films should not be older than uh, 2015. It's for AS, but in A2 you have liberty to talk about, because regulation and historical activities you can go as far as you want in history, but obviously I would recommend you to research the latest happenings as well. And obviously it will be encouraged. So I will later on I will share with you people more recent case studies as well, but it's also not an issue as far as A2 is concerned. So Pulp Fiction 1994, Pulp Fiction was submitted for classification in August 1994. Genre was crime, drama, and thriller. The film had recently won the Palme d'Or. This is French award at Cannes Film Festival in France in May 1994, and Quentin Tarantino's second feature film following the success of Reservoir Dogs 1992. Pulp Fiction follows three interrelated stories in a non-chronological order involving a contract killer called Vincent Vega, a prize fighter called Bush, uh, and Vincent partners Jules. So here we are trying to give background. You can directly jump on to the body without going into details. But just have to give a little bit of detail about the movie. Uh, Up to you. Well, as I told you earlier, I try to provide you handouts with a little more than enough detail. Sometimes, similarly, you will find two or three similar kind of definitions in the beginning of the document in other documents or handouts. The only purpose and psychology behind is that sometimes you are able to remember only 30 and 40% of the content. So that is why my definitions are sometimes redundant, or sometimes I give extra information which is ultimately going to be summarized in your mind and on the paper. So this is the main psychology. Anyways, two BBFC examiners and the BBFC director James Furman examined the film, the Pulp Fiction. The examiner reports available here describes how the film shows us little violence, but holds our attention with charismatic characters for whom violence is merely a prominent item on their job spec. The most violent sequences in the film involve the gunning down of Vincent and the capture and torture of Bush, and a gangster called Marcellus. This scene also involves sexual violence as Marcellus is raped by captors, although most of the rape occurs off screen. I'm gonna pause here and I'll be back in like a few, seconds, I must say.